My God, this is a party that says we believe in parents' rights. You're telling me that as a parent, I'm not smart enough to decide if my child and I need to have gender affirming. Our doctors are not involved. What is going on? So I can't decide what my kid reads. I can't decide for my child what my child says is going on. You're telling me your beliefs, and they keep saying it, and I keep saying, what Bible are you reading? Because God was really clear.
Very clear. Very clear.
All right, guys. So once again, we got to talk about the transgender state representative Democrat from Montana that has been targeted by the GOP for making reckless comments on the House floor while debating legislation that would ban so-called gender-affirming care for minors. Now, I want to talk about this story once again because the GOP has effectively banned this transgender Democrat from the House floor for the rest of the 2023 session, okay? Which is a big move here from the GOP. They're sending a message that you can't go on a House floor and make insane statements like this transgender Democrat did and think that you're going to get away with it. Now, here's the thing. I really want to talk about this story because I think it shows how the pendulum always swings the other way in politics. Democrats have got away with overt authoritarianism, trying to silence political opponents for their free speech. And now it is happening to them. And now the mainstream liberal media, along with the Democrats, want to make a big fuss about it when they're the ones that started all of this. So I want to talk about it. But first, I want to go ahead and play a segment here, a clip from CBS News, so that you guys can get a summary of what is going on with this lawmaker if you guys weren't familiar about what was going on here. And then we're going to get into the reaction from the mainstream liberal media. Take a look.
Political turmoil brewing in Montana. Today, Republican members of the state house voted to ban the state's first openly transgender lawmaker, Democrat Zooey Zephyr, from the House floor. CBS's Carter Evans reports the censure comes after Zephyr criticized Republicans over their votes to ban gender-affirming medical care for minors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just minutes before the vote to bar Montana Democrat Zooey Zephyr from speaking on the House floor, she made an impassioned plea.
Today, I rise in defense of my community and of democracy itself.
The public was banned from the hearing after this scene on Monday, when House leaders denied Zephyr the opportunity to talk. Zephyr had spoken days earlier during a debate on Montana's proposed ban on gender-affirming care for minors.
If you vote yes on this bill, you see the blood on your hands.
Today, the state's first openly transgender representative refused to apologize for those remarks.
I have had friends who have taken their lives because of these bills. So when I rose up and said, there is blood on your hands, I was not being hyperbolic.
Laws targeting gender-affirming care for minors have exploded around the country. 15 states now have bans in place. 17 more, including Montana, are currently considering a ban. At the start of the year, just 3 state governments had bans.
Mr. Speaker, 68 representatives vote aye, 32 have voted no.
The decision to prevent her from all in-person meetings came from a majority Republican House.
When you shut out 11,000 Montanans, it is no surprise that those Montanans would come and demand that their voices be heard.
Now, the vote was right down party lines and effectively silences her. She's not allowed to debate any legislation and must vote remotely. Now, the session only lasts a couple of more weeks, but the debate over surgery and hormone therapy for children continues across the country. Nora?
Carter Evans there in Montana. Thank you.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. The transgender Democrat state representative's name is Zooey Zephyr, which, by the way, what's up with these people and these names? I'm assuming this is not their real name. This is a name that they made up for themselves for their transition. What's up with these names always being like like similar to adult star names? Again, I'm just saying it's kind of weird to me, but again, that's this person's name. Right, and this person went on the House floor and made a ridiculous statement, a statement that is not grounded in any facts or reality, that somehow, some way, because the GOP is banning kids from being able to get sex change operations or to take hormones or therapies to help them transition, because, you know, kids aren't, you know, fully developed in the brain, right, enough to actually be able to make decisions like that, permanent decisions about their body parts, their sexual organs. Yeah, somehow, some way, this is costing children their lives, okay? So much so that this lawmaker felt compelled to make the claim or the statement that they hope that when GOP lawmakers lift their heads up from prayer, that they see blood on their hands, okay? Because presumably the Republicans are responsible for kids losing their lives because they don't want to let kids get sex change operations. An extremely reckless claim that is not grounded in facts or reality. It's just a claim that is being pushed by extremist activists in order to guilt trip people into going along with their radical agenda, and Republicans were having none of it. They said, look, you need to retract your statement and give an apology, or else we're going to basically ban you from speaking, okay? And they ultimately went on to censure this politician and to block this politician from actually attending any more House sessions for the rest of the year, okay? An absolute savage move here from the GOP. And of course, the mainstream liberal media is crying foul, and this politician is doing their rounds on mainstream liberal media like CNN, crying because they've been misgendered as well, along with the bans and stuff like that. Take a look.
Now, you called out some of your colleagues in the Montana Freedom Caucus. At least twice last week, Representative, they referred to you with masculine pronouns. They said, you said it was disheartening to see them stoop so low as to misgender you. But it happened again today. That group came out and they said, in part, and I quote them, Representative, it's unfortunate that Representative Zephyr had neither the maturity nor the humility to take responsibility for his actions and simply apologize. Can I just ask you on a human level, I know you become accustomed to some of this treatment and when they do this, but when this happened today, how does that even make you feel? How do you handle that?
First, I want to say that it's important to note the hypocrisy of a group calling for humility and decorum while misgendering, but it's the same group that advocates for limited government while at the same time using government to take away the healthcare, life-saving healthcare to people in my community. And on a personal level, I don't get distracted by that. I come here to represent my constituents, and so I will show up every day on their behalf.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that, okay? This person is pushing back with this argument that, well, the GOP is being hypocritical because they're supposed to believe in limited government, right? So much limited government that they're supposed to just allow children to get sex change operations. Again, these people mix conservatism and libertarianism up a lot, okay? Conservatives are not libertarians, right? We're not libertarians. And these people have to learn that the hard way. But before I get deeper into that conversation, I actually want to play the reaction here from the cackling hands on The View who picked up on this story. As Whoopi Goldberg goes into an absolute meltdown over this lawmaker being banned from the House floor, going as far as to basically imply that somehow, some way in the Bible, God supports kids being able to get sex change operations to transition their gender. Take a look.
Yeah. Now, the House Republicans banned her from the chamber for the remainder of the legislative session, claiming she broke the rules of decorum. But protesters are demanding that they let her speak. Now, what the hell is going on in this country? That's what I want to know.
What are the rules of decorum?
What are the rules that say, I don't like what you're saying, so I'm going to get a whole bunch of people to think like I think, and we're going to ban you from talking. When did that become the law of the land?
Funny you should ask, because I looked it up, and there is no law.
No,
there is no law. There is no law.
The whole point of this country is we have to figure out how to live together. I don't have to agree with everything you agree with. You don't have to agree with everything I agree with. That's why we have two parties. That's why we have these conversations.
Don't you want someone from the transgender community in the legislature to speak to her lived experience, to speak on behalf of her constituents? Because what she was saying is, I am fielding calls from families in Montana. That's the type of representation you need.
My God, this is a party that says we believe in parents' rights. You're telling me that as a parent, I'm not smart enough to decide if my child and I need to have gender affirming. Our doctors are not involved. What is going on? So I can't decide what my kid reads. I can't decide for my child what my child says is going on. You're telling me your beliefs, and they keep saying it, and I keep saying, what Bible are you reading? Because God was really clear.
Very clear.
Very clear. Oh, well, I was just going to say really quickly, there's obviously rising anti-trans sentiment in this country. It's wrong. There's been a rise in 29% in hate crimes against the trans community. I think that there's conversations that need to be had with people of good faith. I don't know personally where I am on somebody, on minors getting transitioning, but to your point, Whoopi, you actually said it in a very conservative manner. That's for me and when I'm a parent to decide. It's not for the government to decide. The doctors. It's for the doctors, the medical community, and the parents to decide. And that's what I don't get is why should that be the state that's deciding it?
Welcome back. Were you about to say something?
Yes, what I was going to say is jumping off Alyssa's point where she said, you know, and I don't even know where I stand on this. The problem with the issue we're talking about here is it's one step. It doesn't even matter what's being talked about. We are in a democracy where it was one vote for one person, one vote, and our elected representatives. They are shutting this person down, not only doing her job, but as an American. Our First Amendment rights protect not only that right to speak and do her job, but also protest. They came after her one more time and said she was inciting an insurrection, which was very rich. But we looked into it. There was no violence. There was nothing happening.
We looked into it. There was no violence. There was nothing happening.
Stop resisting.
Yeah, so apparently Whoopi wants her kids reading porn, and she believes that somewhere in the Bible, God supports kids getting sex change operations. And the alleged conservative at the table, Alyssa Farah Griffin, is unsure about how she feels about kids getting sex change operations, but claims to be conservative. Somebody explain to me, what makes Alyssa Farah Griffin conservative? I'm not sure exactly what policy position does she have that's actually conservative. I mean, maybe, just maybe, you know, maybe it's the tax stuff, maybe it's the economy, right? Maybe she believes in you know, less regulation. But I can't think of anything socially that actually makes her a conservative. And if she was actually a real conservative, she would be able to explain the difference between libertarianism and conservatism to the cackling hens. Because, again, I think a lot of people get very, very, very confused about the difference. When conservatives say limited government, because the conservative movement has been mixed with the libertarian movement as well, too, they think that we believe no government, right? Limited government and no government are two different things. Conservatives have always believed in government, but necessary government, right? Government where necessary, especially when it comes to this issue of morality, right? That's really what conservatives believe in government, is regulating and legislating morality, okay? Now, we can have an argument about whether or not that is the government's role, but I think that any moral person should believe that, hey, government should regulate what kids can and cannot do. Now, me personally, I'm more of a libertarian when it comes to adults. Like, for example, I think that marijuana should be legal. I don't think that the government should be getting in the way in terms of what people choose to put in their bodies, okay? It's, again, especially a drug like marijuana that, in my opinion, I think is objectively less harmful than alcohol. But on issues like that, yeah, I'm libertarian, right? I think that, you know, if adults want to, you know, be transgender or whatever and get sex change operations, I have no issues with that. I don't care, right? Let them live their lives, okay? Do what you want to do, to a certain extent, that is. But But again, we have laws in place that protect children for a reason, okay? It's the reason why we don't let children drink. It's the reason why we don't let them smoke. It's the reason why we don't let them join the military. It's the reason why we don't let them have guns. It's the reason why we keep them from doing a lot of things, because children's brains aren't fully developed enough to be able to make these types of decisions. But again, this is never an argument that is presented on The View and mainstream liberal media. It's almost as if, again, these people, they don't want to hear the conservative argument, right? They just want you to believe that, hey, kids should be allowed to do this, and if you don't agree with it, then you're transphobic, right? And again, it's just frustrating because our voice is not actually really being represented on these TV shows that advertise themselves as having all voices present at the table, when it is quite clear that conservative voices are just not represented at all. And if the actual conservative argument and voice was represented on these mainstream liberal media platforms, I think that we would be in a much different place from a voting standpoint, right? I really do believe that. It's so slanted in favor of the left that they've convinced people that somehow this is a debate that's worth having. We should be debating whether or not we should let kids get sex change operations and whether or not they should be exposed to explicit adult content in schools, because these liberals are just allowed to flat out lie and to claim that conservatives are banning books in school, as if, again, conservatives are banning the dictionary, right? That's the way they're framing it. And it's just not true. But in regards to this conversation about the GOP banning this lawmaker from the legislative session for the rest of the year, the session, I disagree with it in principle. However, I'm not going to really complain about it because this is what Democrats signed up for. Democrats set the precedent for this. Republicans are simply doing what they got to do in response to what the Democrats have shown us they're willing to do. When Democrats moved to try to remove Marjorie Taylor Greene from Congress, and they ultimately ended up taking her off her committee assignments for stuff that she said not while she was actually in Congress, for something that she allegedly liked on Facebook, right, before she even got into Congress. Yeah, they opened up a can of worms where they say, well, hey, the majority party can censure or punish anybody in the minority party for their free speech. And Democrats have no issues weaponizing the government and punishing people for their free speech. And I've already made this argument to people before. As conservatives, we can't libertarian our way out of this. As much as I want to stand on principle and say, no, we shouldn't do that, we should allow this person to speak, it doesn't matter what they said. I do really believe that. I'm not going to say anything when the GOP says, look, we're in a place in this country where we got to fight fire with fire, right? If Democrats are going to be authoritarian, and apparently the people don't care about the Democrats being authoritarian, we ain't winning, right? Just letting them be authoritarian and standing by and saying, well, we're not going to do anything about it, right? Yeah, I mean, at some point, you have to give them a taste of their own medicine, because that's the only way to stop it. You're not going to stop it by, putting your hands up and saying, well, we're just not going to, fight fire with fire out of principle, and we're just going to let ourselves get ran over, right? We're just going to let them do this. No, we can't do that. We're not libertarian our way out of this. We have to weaponize the government in ways that is uncomfortable in order to win. It is what it is. It sucks, but when you have one side of the political aisle that is just openly, again, weaponizing the government to take away people's free speech, you're not going to win by just rolling over and saying, well, we're not going to do that back to you because, hey, we're principled on this. I understand why they're doing it. I disagree with it in principle, but I understand why they're doing it. I'm not going to complain about it because we know that the Democrats do the exact same thing. They've shown us they would do the exact same thing. It sucks that that's where we're at in this country. But again, in order to actually stop it, you got to show the Democrats, y'all don't want this, right? Y'all don't want to have a country where this is the norm, where we punish politicians simply for saying things that we disagree with. Now, in this case right here of this politician, this person's out here saying stuff that, again, is just untrue. And it's one of those things that they say in order to stop debate, to guilt trip people into going along with a radical agenda, right? That is just immoral and wrong, okay? And that's what really frustrates me, because it works. Them going out here and saying, well, if you don't agree with us, you're costing people their lives, right? You're making it so people want to delete themselves. When they say that, statement to the uneducated person, right, is going to ring and say, hey, well, I don't want these kids deleting themselves, so therefore, we should just let them get what they want, right? Why pick on this minority? And that's the way I think a lot of people who aren't really paying attention look at it. And that's why statements like that are so heinous. And I can totally understand why the GOP was like, yeah, you know what, we're just going to keep this person from speaking. Because it's really hard to push back against statements like that. Because those statements are designed to pull on people's emotions who aren't educated on the issue, who aren't actually really paying attention, who are just listening to it at a glance and saying, well, I don't want this to happen to children, so maybe we should go along with this. Again, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. And while I disagree with it in principle, I'm going to remain neutral and say, hey, turn my head and say, well, Democrats said that this is okay, right? Same thing that happened out in Tennessee, in which, in Tennessee, you can make a better argument because, again, Democrats set the precedent that, if you disrupt an official proceeding, during a legislative session, like what happened on January 6th, then you can expel people from Congress because of it, right? You should be punished for that, right? You should be locked up in jail for that. That's exactly what those Democrats did. And Republicans said, okay, you guys set the precedent. They disrupted an official proceeding. Okay, they broke the rules of decorum. We're going to expel them, right? And then Democrats wanted to cry foul. Oh my God, you can't do that. Well, Democrats set the precedent that, hey, you can punish people for their freedom of speech, right? You can punish people for that type of stuff. Democrats set that precedent. They started doing it first. So if you don't like it, why did you do it in the first place? So like I said, man, I disagree with it in principle, but I'm going to turn my head and I'm not really going to complain about it because unfortunately, this is where we're at as a country where conservatives have to weaponize the government in uncomfortable ways in order to show the Democrats that authoritarianism is not okay. It sucks, but I understand why the GOP feels the need to do it. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.